and alive. I thank you, the good people of Oyo State, for your patience, cooperation, and restraint during this difficult period.
Earlier in his remarks, the Oyo State Commissioner for Justice, Abiodun Aikomo, explained that the executive order applies to associations, groups, and organizations with more than 5 members providing security and allied services in any part of the state. Mr. Aikomo said the measure was designed to prevent unintended consequences that could arise when unregulated groups assume security responsibilities without proper oversight. He added that all existing groups affected by the order have 72 hours to notify the state government for proper documentation and certification.
His Excellency, in his wisdom, has considered it necessary, under the powers granted to His Excellency by the Constitution, to regulate this incident so that we do not have another problem in our hands. Sometimes, when there is a problem in the society and there is no regulated system or program of action, it may create more problems than we are trying to solve.
In attendance were the state's Deputy Governor, Barrister Balawa, the Chief of Staff, Honorable Shegun Ogunyi, Executive Assistant to the Governor on General Duties, Chief Balawa, and some state security chiefs and advisors. And that wraps up the activities of the Oyo State Governor, Engineer Seyi Makinde, for the week. With Samuel Adigun behind the camera, I'm Olalekan Sulaiman, reporting for Saturday Special.
The home is under attack, but not for long, because Hypo is here. Dirty floors and surfaces.
Not on our watch.
Dirty and stains don't be do a shakara. We got the remedy, original palasa. Hypo, go hypo.
Germs always find a way back.
No greed. Protect every day with Hypo.
Progress no dey happen just like that. It dey come from support when you need am.
Mommy, I got the school fees. You too much.
Na money point o.
Money point, thank you.
Customer, na transfer abi? Confirm.
Bro, na transfer.
Na money point oga. Oh, na confirm.
Progress na peace of mind when you know say payment go land as Sure Banker. Progress na small win where the carry person go far.
No worry, yourself go make am. Mo go buy ball.
Victor, even you dey use money point?
Of course now, they use money point.
Confirm.
Money point, made for your progress.
All right, thank you very much for staying with us. This morning on Saturday Special, we will be talking health, and that's hypertension. We'll look at everything that has to do with hypertension. But before we introduce our guest to you this morning, World Hypertension Day, which was May 17, that was last week Sunday, is a day designated and initiated by the World Hypertension League. And this year's theme is controlling hypertension together. Check your blood pressure regularly, defeat the silent killer. To do justice to this conversation this morning, we have the former Director General of Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, Yaba, Lagos, Professor Babatunde Lawal Salako. Prof, it's good to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's also good to know that Prof came all the way from Lagos to speak to this conversation this morning here in Ibadan. Thank you so much, Prof. Let's look at statistics in terms of hypertension globally in Nigeria. As of 2024, it was reported that 1.4 billion adults aged 30 to 74 years worldwide lead with hypertension, and 34.2% of Nigerian adults have hypertension. Prof, before we look at these statistics in in its entirety. What is hypertension?
Thank you very much. High blood pressure is the same thing as hypertension. And let me say that generally blood pressure is required for life to continue. And that is within the normal range. We can look at a range of two figures. There's one that is called the systolic blood pressure, and the other one is called the diastolic blood pressure. Now, the systolic blood pressure is the part of the pressure that keeps the body, the blood circulating within the body. And so it appears to be a little bit more important than the diastolic blood pressure. When the systolic blood pressure goes higher, much more than required, then it becomes hypertension. The figures that have been used have varied over the past years. So really the diagnosis of high blood pressure has been changing. The current figures that is used by the WHO, which is the body that sets the agenda for high blood pressure all over the world, is blood pressure of 140 systolic, over 90 diastolic, and above. So if anybody's blood pressure records a systolic of 140, over 90 diastolic, and above, then that an individual can be described as having high blood pressure. Usually measured twice within 2 weeks. If it's sustained, because sometimes you engage in activities, your blood pressure goes up. During exercise, blood pressure goes up. And then it comes down to normal range. So you might find people at that point. It does not mean that they are hypertensive. And that's why one of the rules of measurement of high blood pressure is that when you come, you sit, you rest for between 15 to 30 minutes. We don't want you to eat, we don't want you to smoke, we don't want you to have exercise within that period. So that we are getting you and your blood pressure at the ambience time, that blood pressure is in its normal range. Now, the diastolic blood pressure, in the past, science used to believe that that's the more dangerous one. But research has shown in recent years that systolic blood pressure is even much more important. Now, both of them are dynamic. They are not figures that stay in one place. And so some people get unnecessarily worried when they measure one BP now and the figure is different from when they measure another time. But the real reason is that blood pressure changes sometimes with activities, sometimes with postures. Now, if you lie down, your blood pressure is likely going to be lower than if you sit. It's also likely to be lower than if you stand. And it's also likely to be lower than if you exercise. So within the context of these conditions, your blood pressure can change. Okay? Now, if you take away all the reasons I have mentioned before, exercise, smoking, eating, before measuring blood pressure, and your blood pressure is greater than or equal to 140 over 90, then you have high blood pressure.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Professor, you have stylishly talked about causes of high blood pressure, but I want you to delve into it fully. You have mentioned some of the reasons why the systolic can be higher and all of that, which are, I can say, routine or normal. But when we really want to talk about high blood pressure, what are those physical factors that can lead to? And I'd like you to speak in a simple language that people at home can understand.
Okay. Now there are two forms of high blood pressure or hypertension, if you like. Now, we have what we call essential hypertension or primary hypertension. Now, that's, it's about 80% of the cases of high blood pressure that you find in people. And then you have secondary hypertension. Now, the secondary type of hypertension have known causes that you can actually attempt to take care of them that may lead to some kind of cure, okay? Whereas the primary one, which is essential, does not have well-known causes. So we describe what has been found to be associated with it as risk factors.
Okay.
That is, those things that you engage in that can give you hypertension. The first thing that I would like to mention is the issue of genetics or the familiar tendencies that goes with high blood pressure. For example, if you have one of your parents or both of them who is hypertensive, then your risk is higher that you are likely going to develop when you are compared with somebody who doesn't have, okay? So genetics is something that has an effect on the individual in developing high blood pressure. Now, there are environmental factors that adds on or that acts in concert with genetics. And then we start to talk about the use of alcohol, for example. You already have a familiar tendency, now you are also taking alcohol. So your risk factor is adding up. And then such an individual will have a higher risk of developing primary hypertension. Perhaps the first thing that I should have also mentioned is the issue of age and blood pressure. Now, blood pressure is being shown to grow with age. Like, say, your blood pressure grows as you are also growing in age. So with age, blood pressure goes up. And it looks like it's one of the main risk factors for people to develop high blood pressure at the older age. Once you are 40 and above, your risk is higher than when you are younger than 40. And so you are adding all of this with all the other risk factors. The other very, very important risk factor is salt intake. Now, if you take salt excessively, you are also likely to develop primary hypertension because black people has been found not to be able to handle salt effectively as the Caucasian would do. And so in black people, taking excess salt leads to hypertension. People who don't exercise, who gain weight, so overweight or obesity or lack of exercise, have also been shown to lead to essential hypertension. Now, cigarettes has not been found really to increase hypertension over time, but when the individual takes cigarette can cause a sharp rise in high blood pressure. And so it's also seen as a risk factor. But cigarette is more of a risk factor for what we call cardiovascular diseases, along with alcohol. Now, there are other things that one may do that may also lead to high blood pressure, but that have not been, for example, stress. Now, everybody requires some level of stress to keep going in life. But again, when this is too much, it can lead to high blood pressure. But stress has not been shown to lead to sustained high blood pressure on its own.
But does it aggravate?
Of course. So, you know, one individual may have multiple risk factors. Apart from having familiar tendencies to it, is smoking, is overweight, is taking salt. So these people are more likely to develop high blood pressure.
You've talked about lifestyle. You've talked about hereditary, inherited from parents. What about food? I know you mentioned salt, but what about food? We've heard over time that do not take oil, for instance, or a certain specific kind of oil. Do not take this food. Do not take this intake of food too much. Does food have anything to do with high blood pressure?
Well, I would say yes, but not directly. Of course, salt and food, they go together. But there are some kind of foods that when you eat them, it can lead to, let me say, excessive fats or cholesterol within the body. Now, cholesterol in itself does not cause high blood pressure, but it acts with high blood pressure to cause cardiovascular disease. For example, cholesterol can block the vessels of the heart, much more importantly, and then the vessels of the brain. So when they get narrowed, and then you have high blood pressure along with this, the vessel is narrow, the pressure within it is high, then some of those things form some, let me just call them debris. We call them plaques, that the pressure in the vessel can dislodge them, and it can go into the brain, and it can block some part of the heart. And such persons can develop a heart attack or a stroke, for example. So that's why the issue of food has become important when we talk about hypertension. And generally, when we talk about fats, all sorts of lipids that when you, any food that you take that is a source of high fats, then one is advised to avoid them.
Okay, when you were telling us about the risk factors, you mentioned a whole lot. Do you also have those of the secondary causes mentioned already?
Well, no. The secondary causes, I said, you have known causes. And let me give just a few examples. For example, if someone has a kidney disease, that person can develop high blood pressure, because the kidney has to do with maintaining fluid balance, excreting salt itself. I just said that black people don't handle salt well. It's their kidney. So rather than excreting excessive salt, keeps it, salt keeps water, and blood pressure in the body. Let me try and explain it clearly. Before we get the product of blood pressure, we will have the volume of blood that is flowing. Now, the volume of blood is also determined by the amount of salt and water that you take. The kidney is expected to excrete excess water and excess salt. But the kidneys can't handle salt very well in black people. So it retains salt. When the body retains salt, water automatically follows, and then the volume of blood increases. Within the system, the amount of blood that you have and the amount of resistance within the flow, the pipe that flows within the body, is expressed as blood pressure. So when the volume goes up, blood pressure goes up. When the volume goes down, blood pressure goes down. That's why if people loses fluid, either by diarrhea or by excessive urine or whatever, that person's BP drops. And then we say the person collapses or something. So that's how those ones are related. So if you have a kidney problem, you are likely to develop hypertension. Unfortunately, if you don't have a kidney problem and you have very bad high blood pressure, it can also affect the kidneys. Now, there are other diseases. There are hormonal diseases. People who have thyroid problem, they may develop high blood pressure. And there are other hormones that are being produced on the surface of the kidney that if we have a problem with it, maybe we have a cancer of it or we have some kind of excessive functioning, it can also lead to high blood pressure. So there are some of these conditions that are known, and if they can be surgically taken care of, we might say that that high blood pressure may be cured.
But the primary hypertension you mentioned, and I want to talk about the ones inherited now. At what age does it begin to manifest?
Well, it depends on how bad what has been inherited is. Somebody may be below 40. If he has both parents, he might develop high blood pressure before 40. So it's really, one cannot really clearly state that it's this age. What we know is that if you have a parent or you have both parents, then you are more likely to develop high blood pressure. Now, sometimes it jumps generation. Somebody can say, oh, my parents don't have, but his grandparents may have had it.
Okay. You have told us about causes and the whole lot. But let's also look at symptoms. Sometimes high blood pressure may not, because in this climate, we rarely go to the hospital, especially our male folks. They rarely go to the hospital, they rarely check their BPs. Even when you want to help them check, they will simply say, look, mere hearing, you want to check my BP alone makes my BP rise. So in such situation, so what are those symptoms? What are those things you're likely to begin to see that gives you a link that this may actually be high blood pressure?
If you take secondary hypertension, then you might have symptoms, because the individual will have symptoms that relates to that secondary disease, okay? But the 80%, or the more than 80%, that is essential, primary hypertension, does not have symptoms. So often it is referred to as a silent killer, because it gradually destroys the body, bit by bit, and by the time the person is having what is a symptom, it will be a symptom of the damaged organ.
Oh.
Yes. So, but some form of general symptoms can be associated with it. For example, headache. If you have very severely elevated blood pressure, then you are likely going to have headache. And that is a warning sign that something bad may happen in the brain. So if you have a bad headache that you've taken paracetamol, you've taken all sorts of pain tablets and it's not going, it's better to check the blood pressure. That's not to mean that headaches cannot come from other things. Headaches is very common, but it also can be a pointer to high blood pressure. If you get too tired of late, you compare your past exercise tolerance in the past, say, 5 years to now, and you are seeing that you are getting unnecessarily tired, it may be that the BP has already started affecting the heart, and the heart cannot pump as strong as possible blood to this brain and the rest of the body. So you might start showing exercise intolerance. It may also be high blood pressure. And you can see that some of these things that I'm explaining are not really coming from the BP itself, but are coming from the organs that the BP is affecting. So people talked about headache, we talked about tiredness.
What about chest pain?
Well, again, chest pain shows that something is wrong with the heart. But the blood pressure itself will not give you symptoms, especially when it's in the early stage. Now, let me say that we have described BP as mild, moderate, and severe, all right? So if you have a mild hypertension, nothing happens. Your body tries to cope. The brain tries to cope. The heart tries to cope. When it gets to moderately severe, then they start to complain because they cannot handle the pressure any longer. In fact, the heart just grows bigger. And then after some time, it just remains like that. It cannot function properly. Now, for the kidneys, it starts to lose some things that the kidney is supposed to save in the body, especially protein. Okay, so when they test the person's urine, they find out that the person is already leaking protein. That's an evidence of damage to the kidney. And for the brain, what you just see is stroke. Sometimes you see some warning. Somebody loses function on one side of the body, and then is rushed to the hospital. Within the next few hours, he's back on his feet. It's his BP that is causing problem in his brain, most likely. And that is also a warning sign for the individual. So hypertension is seen as a silent killer because it does not cause you like malaria, that you have fever, you shiver, you quickly want to go to the hospital. This one, people walk about with very severely elevated blood pressure. They are not even having a headache. And when you find them, ask them to get admitted and rest in the hospital. Since nothing was wrong, say, no, nothing's wrong with me. I can go home. That's why they call it a silent killer, because when it's going to cause the final trouble.
It damages a lot of things.
Yeah.
Let's look at, with all you've said now, are there specific gender who are more prone to hypertension?
Well, if you take male and female, males seem to have higher prevalence of hypertension. But that's up to the age of maybe 50, 55. Then the prevalence changes to females. Perhaps at that age, a lot of men have died. And so what you see is more women. So naturally you have more disease among them. Maybe sometimes it has to do with hormonal changes that occur in females at that age. And so high blood pressure tends to be more common among them at that time. So generally we cannot say this one is having it more than this one. I think it's safer to believe that they both can have it.
Looking at the primary and secondary hypertension now, and I know for primary you mentioned, smoking, alcohol and the likes, of course, which we could say that when it's stopped, the health can go back to what it was before those vices were taken up. But for inherited hypertension, inherited high blood pressure like this, how can it be managed?
It's the same way you manage, whether it is from alcohol, overweight, whatever. It's the same way. If you inherit, you can't change your parents. You cannot determine your parents. So that's your luck for having a parent.
So how can it be managed?
It's the same way you manage for others.
The same way? For smoking, you can stop smoking. But
yes, but it's not just...
Someone...
You see, you can, if you stop smoking, if you have other risk factors, like I said, other risk factors, it doesn't mean that the BP will come down, but it will be easier to control. But it's been shown by research that if your high blood pressure is due only to smoking or due only to alcohol, for example, if you stop alcohol, the BP may come down. It may be controlled, all right? But you have something that cannot be controlled. You cannot control your age. Okay, so as you are growing older, your risk is higher, so you need to monitor. And if your BP is getting higher, you have to start treating it, whether you are drinking alcohol or not.
Treating it by medication?
By medication. We come to talk about
yes.
that.
Before we go to treatment, I'd like us to look at gestational hypertension. Yeah, it seems to be common among women that are pregnant. I'd like us to look at it quickly.
Yeah, well, people who get pregnant very late in life they call them elderly primary gravid. If you are getting pregnant for the first time and you are 30 years and above, you run a risk of developing pregnancy-related.
We're going to come back to that age 30 when you said late. But let's quickly go pay some bills. We're going to be back shortly after this commercial break. Don't go away. Did you say 30?
Yes, make we talk. Time don't reach to rearrange his house to give una small wisdom. Shots might be fresh now, but you know, I beg no be so. Before una go talk, say our smile no reach. Make una think I'm twice so. Ever heard of Colgate? The #1 oral care brand in the world.
Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection unlocks 24 hours cavity defense. The formula boost with calcium for lifelong smiles.
Mom, it's a time to brush. No more cover mouth. Because Colgate, that's who do yaga with your smile.
Colgate for 24 hours maximum cavity protection.
Welcome back. It's still Saturday special on the Broadcasting Corporation of Oyo State. Of course, we still have with us in the studio Professor Babatunde Lawal Salako, who is the Director General, former Director General of Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, Yaba, Lagos. And we've been discussing about high blood pressure, that is also called hypertension. And before we went on that break, you were trying to explain to us that a woman, getting pregnant for the first time at 30 and above is at risk of hypertension. Please, can you break it down?
It's been shown that people who get pregnant late, okay, and I said 30 years and above, often develop pregnancy-related high blood pressure. Now, it can just be hypertension, essential hypertension in pregnancy, okay? That is different from what is described as eclampsia or pre-eclampsia. Now, pre-eclampsia and eclampsia are associated with high blood pressure, loss of protein in the urine, and then fluid retention. And when it's worse, seizures can occur, and people can even go into coma. They can have kidney failure along with it. So it's a very dangerous condition, and oftentimes the treatment is to deliver the baby. Of course, whether
prematurely,
at whatever stage, because at that time the obstetrician is more concerned about the mother. Because the mother can always get pregnant again anyway. So it's like saying sacrifice.
Get pregnant again. We've seen some women who have waited for years and managed to get pregnant for the first time, and they're having this gestational issue. I remember one woman whom I had to go with USTH, and she was always coming in and out of USTH because of her blood pressure. She was pregnant. And it was not her first pregnancy anyway. But she had this hypertension that was, very hard on her. And at some point, I had to run away because I couldn't. And eventually, the baby had to be brought out.
Yes, that's what I just said. That for you to treat that condition, you need to bring the baby out. Now, what the doctors do is try to manage both the mother and the baby, push them towards maturity, and as close as possible to maturity for them to deliver the baby. For as long as the mother's life is not in danger, they will continue to keep the baby. But once the mother's life is in danger, they will take the baby out to keep the mother alive. I said because the mother can always get pregnant again. So that is different from primary hypertension. And it's also very difficult to treat with drugs. Drugs don't treat it well. They sometimes bring the BP, drugs sometimes bring the BP to safe range. But when that BP is going to severely elevated range, that can cause heart failure, can cause kidney failure, can cause stroke, then we don't want to keep that baby again. That baby has to come out. whichever way it is. So it's a condition that is still being investigated up to now. So many things here and there have been tried, but I can only say that it's only subtle improvement in treatment strategies that have been seen.
We are hearing a lot of high blood pressure cases these days. It was not so few years back, let's say 10, 15 years ago. Now, number one, is it because people were not really checking their high blood pressure, or times have changed? Our lifestyle has changed, you know, the food we eat, and every other thing we engage in, environmental factors also. What's the cause of the
I believe it has to do with awareness. See, the public awareness to diseases generally, and hypertension is just one of them. Those who have high blood pressure, it's believed that only about 30% of them are aware that they have high blood pressure. So the World Hypertension League and International Society of Hypertension have come up with celebration of World Hypertension Day, which basically is meant to remind people
to
check their blood pressure, for health workers to provide guidance, health talk to the community around them, to increase people's awareness about high blood pressure, the damage it can do to them if they don't treat it, and probably what they need to do so that they don't develop high blood pressure. And those who have developed high blood pressure, what they need to do to ensure that they don't develop complications. And I believe that's what is growing. And now we have social media. In some years back, say 30 years back, we didn't have that. Now we have that. So you have information all over the place, different groups, even though we run a risk of misinformation or too much information. But that is one of the reasons why you hear about these things.
Even with the awareness you're talking about now, social media, you know, some people drop in dead and they say, oh, the person has been hypertensive. How often or how much should people check their blood pressure?
If you have a family history and you are 40 years and above, it's better for you to check your blood pressure at least once in 3 months if your BP is not high. And the older you become, the more frequent you should check it. If you have developed it, then you should check your blood pressure at least every month, because at least every month you should see your doctor. Okay?
For someone who is hypertensive.
Who is hypertensive. If your BP is not controlled, then you should check your blood pressure at least every 1 week or 2 weeks.
What
so
do you
that
mean
you
by
can
not
be sure.
controlled?
Not controlled means you are taking treatment, and it has not come below 140/90. Okay? When your blood pressure is below 140/90, we say your blood pressure is normal. And if you are on treatment, we say you are under control. Okay? But there are a lot of people who are taking treatment and they are not controlled. In fact, only about less than 20% of people are controlled, even though they are taking treatment. But of course, there are reasons for that. There are some of the drugs that have side effects. In actual fact, there is no drug.
Before you go to the side effects, because I was waiting for us to get there. Let's quickly look at, how long should a person be treated for hypertension?
For life.
Why should it be for life?
Well, because if you stop, the BP goes back.
Is there no curable drugs? Have we not done
Not
research?
so far.
Thank God you were, heading a research institute. And one would have thought that we would have gotten to a point where ailments or sickness or diseases like hypertension would have gotten a cure and not to stay on drugs for life because of the side effect.
Well, so far, diseases like hypertension, diabetes, sickle cells, those are, you can't have a cure for now. I mean, no cure has been described so far. You can attempt to treat, and control them. Maybe in future, maybe you can get something. The best I believe that science have put forward is maybe a poly pill that you can take, and maybe for the next 1 month you may not need to take it before you take another one.
Is it common in Nigeria?
No. These are experimental drugs. They are not drugs that are available for public. Science is still trying to look for. So you may have something like that.
Just like we have in HIV cases where there are now drugs that instead of taking daily drugs.
So that is what science is looking at. We cannot say cure can occur, but we haven't found it. But maybe in future, maybe science can find.
Okay, my concern about these drugs is the fact that the liver keeps working on them. And you know that pressuring the liver goes a long way.
Well, you have to choose between getting complication of hypertension, which is what happens when people don't take drugs. You know, there are people that you've seen is known hypertensive. He's been given drugs. He's not seeing his doctors. He's not taking the drugs, and then he suffers either stroke or suffers heart attack, or the kidney fails. So you have a condition that needs to be controlled. If you don't control it, it portends danger. So you worry on that first before you start talking about. After all, God has given you kidney, liver. What did He give you for? To excrete the waste in the body. So keep putting them there. They will continue to do the job.
Where the liver is overworked and it cannot do as it should. Because don't forget, as we age,
the liver don't get overworked until it gets diseased. Okay, it depends on what you put in your mouth. If it's just drugs for treating you are unlikely going to. It's possible, but you are unlikely going to overwork your liver based on that. But if you do other things, alcohol here and there, all sorts of native or refined herbs, and you are just putting all of this together, then you can start talking about overworking your liver. Because I don't want to create an impression that if you take your antihypertensive, that you have,
and we have a lot of people who run away from taking those medications because they say, I don't want to be on it for life.
But it's ignorance. It's ignorance, and it's better for them to know now that so far high blood pressure is treated for life. Now there are situations where people talk about drug holiday and things like that. You know, we don't want to. That's for science. We don't want to talk about that too. But you must take the drug regularly and watch your blood pressure. Of course, in history, there are people who have taken antihypertensive treatment for more than 10 years, and doctors have tried to stop to see what will happen. And they have not needed antihypertensive for some 1 or 2 more years.
Maybe because the risk factors were also checked.
All of those put together, yes, but you see, the danger in not taking the drug is worse than in taking it. We usually look at what we call risk-benefit. So, take this drug, what is the risk if you don't take it? What is the benefit if you take it? If the benefit outweighs the risk, then you take it.
Let's quickly talk about some of the side effects that are very common in high blood pressure. But before we do that, let's pay some bills. Let's go on a commercial break, and we'll be right back to look at some of the side effects. Stay with us. Don't go away.
Progress no dey happen just like that. It dey come from support when you need am.
Mommy, I got the school fees. You too much.
Na money point oh.
Money point, thank you.
Customer, na transfer abi? Confirm.
Bro, na transfer.
Na money point oga. Oh, na confirm.
Progress na peace of mind when you know say payment go land as sure banker.
small, small wind where they carry person go far.
No worry, yourself go make am. Mo go buy ball.
Victor, even you, they use money point?
Of course now, they use money point.
Confirm.
Money point, made for your progress.
All right, welcome back. It's still Saturday special. And of course, saying big thank you to Professor Babatunde Lawal Salako for, taking out his time to be here with us. Of course, before we went on that break, we were talking about side effects. Tell us all the kinds of side effects.
Yes, I think the most important side effect that I would like to mention is low blood pressure. Because low blood pressure kills faster than high blood pressure. So we don't want to aggressively give the individual drugs that will crash or bring the blood pressure down very fast. Although there are conditions, there are hypertension conditions where you must bring down the blood pressure as fast as you can, but you have to watch it. Because once it goes below a certain level, it becomes too low for the brain, and the person can suffer a stroke. Or sometimes the person can suffer a heart attack or just collapses. So hypertension shows itself by tiredness, dizziness rather, that's what I mean. Feeling dizzy, blackout, almost falling down, or start to stagger, feel too light. When you start an antihypertensive, it means that your blood pressure is getting too low. And the thing to do is to stop the treatment and see your doctor so that he can rearrange the dose of the drug. Now, beyond that, all drugs taken by mouth can cause diarrhea, can cause nausea, can cause vomiting. So those are common side effects. I believe that some other drugs, especially the ones that are used in black people, the diuretics, the water pills, that's what they call them, can deplete some elements in the body, for potassium, for example. So that can also cause some kind of tiredness. Men often complain about loss of libido because of drugs. And somehow, these drugs don't do the same thing in all men. So the ones that is causing loss of libido in Mr. A may surprisingly not cause it in Mr. B. So you have an array of drugs that you can, change with. But unfortunately, some men, because of that, they just don't take the drugs. But that's not too good, because the repercussion of not taking the drug is worse than taking the drug. In any case, there can always be solution found to a loss of libido. So that shouldn't be a reason why anybody will not take the drugs. So beyond that, well, if you take the water pills, you might be passing urine frequently. And so a chief executive now who is in the board meeting or something will have some problem with that. Or somebody who wants to go out, travels, or go to parties, has to be stopping on the way and all of that. You may want to change that kind of drug. Or you find, you decide to take your drugs maybe at night, so you can have whatever you want to have before you start your travel the next day. Again, if you take it at night, you won't sleep well. That's another challenge. So if the individual feels that that kind of drug is not good for him, it can always be changed to another drug.
Okay, you mentioned earlier the symptoms or what it can actually lead to when hypertension is not being treated. Does it also lead to, do we talk of blindness also? Does it cause memory problems in terms of the effects to the brain? Yes,
hypertension has been associated with all of that. It can cause some memory problem because over the years it might have been causing some small stroke that does not show in the body, but it's happening in the brain. And by the time the individual has plenty of that, Memory loss can occur. Sometimes dementia can occur. What else did you mention now?
Blindness.
Yes. Now we have some very severely elevated blood pressure that can affect the eyes and can cause acute blindness in people or reduce function in the eyes. Of course, the eyes itself also has its own blood pressure, the glaucoma, that they measure the pressure and then it also gets treated.
All right. I know you mentioned earlier the benchmark for hypertension, which is 140/90. What's the benchmark for hypotension? And what's the benchmark of a normal blood pressure?
Well, let's say hypotension is not as clearly defined as hypertension. Because sometimes hypertension in individual is different. For example, if somebody already has very high blood pressure and you are treating the person, that person can experience hypertension even at hypertensive level. I'll give you an example. Somebody's got blood pressure of 200/140, and you start to treat the person. And you bring that person's blood pressure down to 150/100 in one day, he will develop hypertension. He will start having the symptoms that dizziness, he might fall down, he might even develop stroke or develop heart attack, because the brain, the heart, and the kidneys, all of them are already used to a very high perfusion pressure. The pressure that pushes the blood into the brain, into the heart, into the kidney. They are used to high. So when you reduce it suddenly, then that pressure is not good enough to get the blood to the brain. So the brain starts to complain. It's not high enough to get the blood to the heart. So the heart also starts to complain. So what we usually do is you bring down the blood pressure gradually so that the body resets itself to get used to the new blood pressure. So we can bring somebody from 200/140 to 160/100 and leave him there, even though it's hypertension. But we don't want to bring him further so that he doesn't suffer all of this. So we leave him there for a few days, week. He's set, he's used to that. Then you continue again until you are able to bring that person below 140.
Okay. I think, okay, go ahead, sir.
Now, the other one for people, some people talk about having low blood pressure. Maybe they have 90/60. If your blood pressure goes below that, you are more likely to suffer hypertension. But there are people who go about with 90/60, 90/70, 100/60, and they run, they do all their daily activities and nothing happens. Such people shouldn't be bothered. Once you have a pressure that can make you to have your daily activities without feeling unnecessary.
And it's consistent.
And it's consistent, then you don't have a problem.
I know.
Okay, let's quickly.
Still on this hypertension.
Okay.
I know you mentioned earlier that hypertension kills faster than hypertension, but it feels like we do not talk more about hypertension. We dwell more on hypertension.
Yeah, because hypertension is not as common as hypertension. In fact, oftentimes hypertension is a result of our trying to intervene in hypertension.
Okay. But for
tampering with the original state.
But for instances where you are not trying to tamper with the hypertension now, what causes hypertension?
Well, you know, some people have what we call postural hypertension. They stand up, the blood pressure drops. Okay, because of some, I'm not going to be able to explain that now. Some changes within the neurons of the body. There's something we call sympathetic system. I don't know how to explain that better than that. But when you have challenges with such, some people might have hypertension. And so they often ask them to wear some kind of socks to keep the blood flowing up so that the BP can remain there. And of course, if people are taking drug treatment, the blood pressure is going down. Or sometimes you take herbs, you take all sorts of things that you don't know the effect on blood pressure, and they are just bringing down your BP. It can also cause hypertension.
Okay, let's look at, is there anything like high blood pressure in children?
Of course, children do have high blood pressure, but their pressures are defined by their age percentile or something. I think the pediatrician knows a lot more about that. But they also do have. It's like once it's beyond what is normal for them, it can also cause the same thing.
What's normal for children?
Well, I'm not going to be able to say that because I'm not a pediatrician. But they measure the BP in what they call a percentile of age. So they need to do some calculation. It's not like our own. Now you have a general cutoff level.
Okay. So apart from this, let's look at anxiety. Some say it's one of those risk factors. When you have something, I know a lot of times when someone is having BP, people start advising the person. And what is that thing on your mind that you're thinking about? What is that thing that is weighing you down? And looking at the current economic situation in Nigeria.
Yeah, well, anxiety can only bring stress. And we have said before that one of the risk factors of hypertension is stress. So when you are anxious over certain things, there are certain things that happen within your body. The body produces some hormones. One of them, some of them, they call them stress hormones. I don't know how to describe it, but the cortisol have been found to respond to stress. And these are hormones that can increase salt retention and water retention. And you remember I told you the issue of volume and hypertension. So the stress can be, anxiety can be seen as, at the time you have that thing on your mind and it's so worrisome, your blood pressure may be a bit beyond what it used to be. Some people have developed high blood pressure when they have very bad life events. Husband died, wife died, or children died or something, and took time to grieve, to get out of grief and all of that. BP may go up.
But for some people like that, when they eventually overcome such incidents in their
BP
life,
may also come down.
Okay.
BP may also come down. Yes, because you don't forget that we mentioned some risk factors that may be associated. For example, if such an individual already have a familiar tendency to develop high blood pressure, and then you have anxiety on top of it, that can bring up that blood pressure, and it may remain sustained.
Let's look at hypertensive emergencies. What are those things you notice happening in your body or within you that should be an emergency, but people are not taking it as emergencies?
No, if it's emergency, there is no way you will be the one taking it, or it will take you. So once it's an emergency, people who will be helping you to do that, because you would have lost it. Now, we have what we call hypertensive emergencies. When BP becomes very high, 180 over 120 and above, I mentioned the issue of headache. Headache can be very, very serious, banging. And before you know it, it can lead to breathlessness, difficulty in breathing, because the BP is now too much for the heart. The heart can't cope. So the heart goes into what we call acute failure. When that happens, the BP is in the roof and you have difficulty in breathing. Nobody tells you that if you don't do anything about this, something terrible will happen. So you'll be calling people, or people will be carrying that person and taking the person to the hospital.
Okay, when there's an heart attack, maybe coming from hypertension, how many minutes does the person have to live? Are there precautionary measures the person can take at that moment?
Well, if somebody knows that he has a heart attack, we always advise, if you have aspirin around, you can take maybe like 300 milligrams of aspirin, chew it, and of course, find a way to get yourself to the hospital or people get you to the hospital. Because depending on how bad it is, death is very near if you are not near a hospital. In climes where they have paramedics and ambulances available, they have been trained on how to treat such individuals and get them to the hospital so that they can be on oxygen, they can be on ventilator if they need it and all of that.
You know, go on, finish on.
But in our own environment, we are just starting ambulance services, and not many people in the public also know what to do. So it's a big danger for anybody to experience a heart attack. Sometimes before getting to the hospital, they are dead because the heart will just stop.
But and homemade remedies to take aspirin.
Yeah, if you have, if you think that that's what you have,
should be chewed and not swallowed.
Chewed, no, just chewed. So, because it can easily get absorbed in your mouth.
Okay, while saying that and talking about emergencies around hypertension, now the National Health Act has made provision for emergency cases to be taken with or without deposit payment and all of that. Now, is this act working in Nigeria as of today?
Well, so far it should work in public hospital.
Should?
Yes, it should work in public hospital. But you know, managers of public hospital are also groaning under poor financial support and resources. And they don't even have what to use for that person. So that's where that act becomes ineffective. Okay, but in hospitals, in government hospitals that are able to provide what such people need, they can do it. Private hospitals certainly will not do that, even though
it's an act. Emergency
is supposed to be treated, whether you have this act or not, by medical practice.
But we still see today, I mean, we get to hospitals and then they do not even take emergencies as emergencies.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. I imagine that they don't probably have the resources to use for that person.
Not just resources. There are times we hear of, bring police reports.
Those
there
are
times
rules.
some things are requested.
But under the National Health Act, you treat first. And then you come back to the
life is at
you
risk.
Keep the person's life first.
No. You see, if you are talking about general emergency, it's different from gunshot wounds. Okay? Gunshot wounds has to do with police reports and all of that, because you don't know whether these are robbers or these are bandits now that we have, or kidnappers that have gun exchange with police and all of that. So you need to report. You may not even ask for police report, but you need to report if you treat such persons.
All right.
Okay, so sorry. You have this. Under Nigerian law, victims of gunshot wounds are entitled to immediate, compulsory medical treatment in any public or private hospital without the need for an initial police clearance or monetary deposits. This right is primarily backed by the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act of 2017 and Section 20 of the National Health Act.
Yes, I'm not denying the fact that the Health Act has put it that way. But if you get to a hospital and the hospital does not have the resources to treat you, there's nothing they can do.
Why is an hospital established without having resources to treat patients?
Are you saying that you don't know that hospitals are not well funded?
No, but you should have there should be modalities in place to treat patients.
I think you should call one or two of the CMDs.
You know, recently we had this issue of antivenom not being available in some hospitals.
Yes, because it's just part of, there are no resources.
It means that for us...
Now, if you get an antivenom in your hospital and it gets expired, that's money gone, okay? And you don't have plenty of such resources. So a smart CMD will not want to stock something that does not come on a daily basis.
Okay, why not let's look at, there are periods when some issues around having snake, existing more happens, like the rainy season that we are now. One would have believed that in this period should be a period where hospitals should consider having it available already. I can
agree
understand.
with you. If you see, we have something we call epidemiology, which discusses the pattern of diseases, when disease is common, when you find a case. If we are certain about that, then the hospitals are supposed to use that knowledge to prepare for for example, now they are talking about hemorrhagic fever, Ebola fever somewhere. So it's expected that every hospital now in Nigeria should be getting ready, because for what is what, any case can just come into the country. That's the kind of thing that the hospital prepares for. But with my own experience with the hospital where I work, for example, I work in UCH, and I know that UCH is hard off. There's no, finances are not just there to do everything that the hospital wants to do. They charge patients, yes, but even what they are charging patients, there are millions of patients that are taking treatment and they are not able to pay. They are begging and writing the CMDs until we have an insurance that covers everybody. The insurance that we have currently covers most likely people who are working for government. Until states have insurance. I know Lagos State have insurance.
Oh, your state have?
They have now.
Oh, very well, working.
So if all of that exists, then we need community insurance. The market people. People who don't work for government.
No, even like the one in your state. Yes. I mean, covers for people in the market.
Well, that's good news. So that means that, but it should not just be existing. It should function efficiently and effectively. They should pay the hospital. If they are paying the hospital, then the hospital can acquire not just drugs, but also equipment that they can use to treat people.
All right. I know, we have to go, but back to the hypertension issue. At the beginning of the program, you mentioned food that should not be taken by hypertensive patients, talking of food in high fat cholesterol. What are those food that is safe for them?
Well,
food and fruits.
Fruits, yes. Any food that contains some level of potassium are allowed, because this has been seen to help in the control of blood pressure. And oftentimes it's the fruits, generally, that contains some of these vitamins that assist in the control of blood pressure. And any food that anybody eats, let me say, vegetables, for example, apart from fruit, are also very good in control of blood pressure.
In this climate, we like herbs a lot.
Yes.
For everything that is wrong, we like to take herbs.
It's not only in this climate.
Do you recommend herbs for hypertensive patients? If
it is refined, why not?
What do you mean by refined?
Yeah, if, for example, if it's gone through NAFDAC review, because what NAFDAC does is to ensure that it is not toxic for the body. So once it's not toxic for your body, you can take it.
Okay, one word as we call it a wrap. What message will you give to Nigerians in checking their BPs regularly and, their intake should stay, healthy?
Well, I believe...
To add to that, Prof, when is the right time to check your BP? What time of the day is the best time to check?
There is no time you can't check. But when you want to check, I said, don't eat for the next 30 minutes. I mean, before you measure it, don't smoke, don't exercise, or just rest for 15 to 30 minutes after all of that, before you take the blood pressure. So you check, that's when you can get an optimal true blood pressure. Okay, so whether it's in the night or in the morning or in the evening, it will not matter much.
Okay, so your
advice...
Yes,
so I believe what we need to do as people is to pay attention to our health generally, and blood pressure being very important. For people who are 40 years and above, they should check their blood pressure quite regularly. Any opportunity that they have to check it, especially if they have family history. And for those who have been diagnosed, they should please take their medications regularly. I know that sometimes medication could be costly, but doctors can move around medications and look at the cheaper one that the individual can buy and get to use. And if you have any challenge with your drug in terms of side effect, discuss with your doctor. Don't just stop on your own, because the repercussion will be greater.
Is there any help center somewhere somebody can reach out if the person is having issues? I'm just saying, tailoring around hypertension.
You see, the hypertension now is seen as a public health challenge. And so it's been taken out of just tertiary and secondary hospital. It's now being treated at the primary health care center. And we are now trying to develop a way where these places can be well equipped for equipment to measure blood pressure, where nurses and other workers who are there can actually dispense the drugs for the people, or even measure the blood pressure. It's called task shifting from the doctors to these other medical workers.
To save more lives.
Because if doctors are not at the primary health care, these are the people who are there. And since hypertension has become a public health issue, these people should be allowed to take care.
We said so much about, lifestyle and every other thing concerning hypertension and how it can be prevented. But what about exercise?
Yes.
When you have, an hypertensive patient who is engaged in physical activity in terms of, cardio, weightlifting, is it advisable for them?
No. Exercise for hypertension is not weightlifting and all of those ones are building muscles. Okay? Exercise for hypertension, brisk walking. Okay. Maybe little jogging. We don't want you to exert, because when you exercise, blood pressure goes up. It's only when you settle down that the blood pressure comes down. But when you do brisk walking, you walk, you sweat, you burn some fats. These are things that are responsible for high blood pressure. And if you can lose them, then it can help in the control of blood pressure. So exercise is an additional treatment way, sort of.
Okay, let's quickly look at the SPIG and then we call it a wrap. Some people believe that the hospital, the big manual SPIG is the best to check your BP. While some of us who believe that we should check all, even when we are home, believe that we can use the digital blood pressure.
No, the manual SPIG is dead. It's dead a long time ago in advanced countries. It's only in our own, because one is fraught with all sorts of, the person who is measuring also is important, that he knows what he's doing. His ears are still can hear very well, because what we measure, what we use is sound. So anybody who is deaf or partially deaf may not be able to measure appropriately. And some people just measure, they like some figures. So they just whatever it is, they just write their own figures down. These are little issues that are associated with the mercury SPIG. Apart from the fact that mercury is toxic to the body, it's poisonous. So advanced countries they've done away with it. And we are also supposed to do away with it, and it's supposed to be replaced by digital. But
we see that the digital, sometimes you check immediately 3 times, and it's giving you 3 different results. So which should you think?
Sometimes it's how you, whether you are seated. When your BP is being measured, you have to sit well, rest, your legs on the ground, everything relax.
Just show us what it
and
looks
you
like,
have to relax, okay, with your back like that. And then the person who is measuring, the SPIG must be at the level of the heart. An untrained person can just measure anyhow and you will get different results. Although it doesn't mean that you will get the same figure, but you get results that are not more than 4 to 5 millimeters of mercury different. And you find an average of the last two. The first one is usually discarded because sometimes it comes with anxiety with people. By the time you are tying the thing, is so when you measure that, as soon as you finish measuring the first one, he's relaxed. So you don't use that figure. You use the second one and the third one, and you find an average of it.
Wow. All right, on this note, we want to say a big thank you to our dear Professor Babatunde Lawal Salako, who is a former Director General of Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, Yaba, Lagos. On behalf of our crew, our producers, and crew member, we want to say a big thank you to you for making our time to be here with us in discussing the issue around hypertension. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll go on a break, and when we come back, we're going to be serving you with global updates. Stay with us. Don't go away.
Welcome to Global Update on Saturday Special this morning on BCOS Television. Elia Kederita Basharin Ibadan. My name is Bimbo Akambi. Gunmen have killed at least 25 people, including 6 police officers in attacks across Honduras. The attacks marked Thursday as one of the most violent days the country has seen in recent years. They came despite ongoing efforts by the government to rein in organized crime and violence. 19 people were killed as gunmen raided a palm plantation in the municipality of Trujillo in the north of the country. A leader of one rural group told the AFP news agency that those killed were employees of an armed group controlling a plantation. However, local media indicated that armed suspects had fired indiscriminately on laborers. They reported that the oldest victim was 61. Photos showed bodies, some wearing thick rubber boots for work, strewn on the ground outside. Meanwhile, in the west near the Guatemalan border, 6 police officers were killed in another shooting in the municipality of Omua. Police report that the officers had traveled to the area as part of an operation to quash gang activity. However, they were ambushed. Honduras is struggling to crack down on gang violence until January, and many parts of the country were under a state of emergency launched in 2022. Two Indian climbers have died on Mount Everest during a record-breaking period of ascents via Nepal's southern route, as experts warn of overcrowding on the world's highest peak. Nepal is home to 8 of the world's 10 highest peaks and welcomes hundreds of adventurers each spring. At least 5 climbers have died during this Everest season, including 2 Indians and 3 Nepalese. A United States and Czech climber died on Mount Makalu earlier this month. Nivesh Kalki, director of Pioneer Adventures, named the latest victims as Sandeep Ali, who he said submitted on May 20, and Arun Kumar Tiwari, who reached the peak on May 21. Nepali climber Kamilita Shepa, who scaled Everest for his record 32nd time earlier this month, returned to the capital Kathmandu on Friday, where he expressed concern about the experience of some climbers.
On the 20th of May 2026, above 274 people summit successfully, including the climbers and the Nepali Climbing Sherpa Guide. This year, 2026, more than 500 people obtained the climbing permit for Mount Everest from the Department of Tourism.
Pictures posted by climbers show a long line of people climbing up fixed ropes queuing in the icy, low-oxygen, high-altitude zones. Nepali tourism officials say the final number will be tallied after the climbs are verified, which require photographs and statements from the climbers' expedition company and guides. Hundreds of people protested outside Ireland's parliament on Thursday to express outrage at the death of a Congolese-born man after he was